Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. It is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilets leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs at 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right under Jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. No, 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 no,
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Eggs. Here we are, live from Access Studios again. It's Mike and I. Today's guest is Michael Johnston. Michael is the singer and songwriter behind a band called Smalltown Poets. They are an Atlanta-based musical group that was formed in 1996. The band consists of Michael at lead vocal, then Danny on keyboards and some backup vocals, Kevin at guitar, and Miguel at bass, and Byron on the drums. Got the band over the course of their career has got 3 number 1 singles, more than 10 top 10 radio hits, and has been nominated for literally every award under the sun, including 2 Grammys, 7 Dove Award nominations, and a Billboard Music Award for the band. Their latest album came out in May 2018. It's called Say Hello. Please welcome our guest, Michael Johnston, from the band Smalltown Poets.
Hey Michael, how's it going?
Good. Hey, guys.
Thank you for making the time to come on with us. I know it's been in the making for quite a while. We've been emailing back and forth for about a month now. So it's good to finally actually link up. As Ryan kind of mentioned earlier, our show kind of goes back, and it's called Eggs because we kind of go through the course of your career and pull the eggs out. So we like to start back kind of at the beginning. So do you mind kind of going and just telling us about the origin of the band and how you guys formed?
Not at all. Yeah, and thank you guys for having me. It's cool to be here chatting about creativity with you guys.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where it all started with the story of the band is just kind of chasing that creativity. Danny, that you mentioned, he and I met each other when we were, I think, about 15 years old. We met in a creative writing class in high school. So towards the end of a school year, we got put into a group. It was me and Danny and one other guy to do a kind of a class project at the end of the year. And we became friends pretty quickly once we started realizing how much we had in common, and especially around the pursuit of creativity. And Danny already had been building a friendship with this guy who was a little bit younger that played drums. And I think they actually, it's kind of funny to think of it, but they performed together just on drums and piano before I met Danny. So Byron and Danny have started becoming friends, started playing music together a little bit. If you can imagine a guy playing piano and singing and a guy playing drums, it's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is awesome.
So, we met as teenagers and started playing music together. And right off the bat, we were really more interested in writing songs, even though we weren't very good at it. as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we would play for anybody that would listen, somebody's backyard, somebody's birthday party, whatever. We would play. It didn't matter that we were trying to be a rock band but didn't have a guitar player. We were just trying to make it work, and I guess we figured those things would come along in time. And we eventually met some other guys and played, independently for a number of years, and that kind of ran its course. But Byron and Danny and I I think we began to figure out some more about how to write songs, not just for ourselves, but that were true to ourselves, but that would connect with other people. And it came from sort of the nuts and bolts that we learned in that creative writing class back in high school. It was honest writing is good writing. And so we just try to pursue that, just being honest. It seemed like the more honest that we were, that the more that connected with folks. And that led to Smalltown Poets. We met two other guys when we started making some friends in the Nashville area, and Smalltown Poets started then. So
you mentioned Nashville. Is that where you guys grew up, or is that kind of?
So South Georgia. So I'm in the Atlanta area now. I grew up, and Danny and Byron, the three of us, went to high school in a little town called Tifton, Georgia. So if you were familiar at all with the southeast corner of the world, Tifton is about an hour and a half north of the Florida line, the Georgia-Florida line, right in the middle of the state.
I think there's a band that's
Georgia-Florida line.
I haven't heard of them. I don't know what you're talking
about. Cool. So yeah, let's kind of keep that going a little bit. So let's talk a bit more about your songwriting process. So, I mean, you said, that you guys have sort of stumbled on the fact that honesty is what resonated the best. But what's it look like when you guys sit down and say, hey, we want to write an album? You mentioned, and I don't know if you maybe want to go into this a little bit, but so the band, Smalltown Poets, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but I'm trying to make some context here, had separated for a little bit, and then you guys decided to come back together and create some new music. And so I imagine after a little time off from, creating music, maybe things got a little rusty. So how do you approach each other when you decide to sit down and write an album? Like, what does that songwriting process look like?
Oh, that's a really good question. And so it may be obvious, but I'll just point out. So Danny and I met in a creative writing class. So he and I are the ones that write lyrics. We're certainly open to other guys pitching in ideas. Definitely. We have a very open writing atmosphere, but we seem to be the two that are most interested in it and have kind of developed some craft along that. And that part probably we may have had to knock the dust off of that a little bit. Musically speaking, though, all of us have kind of stayed in an expression of music in some way, had our hands in it, haven't completely laid it aside, even when we were not doing anything for about 5 years or so together as a band. But the process for us writing-wise, I love it so much because it isn't the same thing. There are probably a few different ways that it happens, and those things kind of repeat, but it's not, hey, there's one guy that brings ideas and we just, bring our own thing to those ideas. Everybody contributes, whether it's the beat or the feel or the chord progression, or, hey, this is an idea that's a little bit more piano oriented, or this is an idea that is a little more stripped down. Everybody's bringing in ideas. So the process looks a lot like trying to manage the best of those ideas. And one of the things that was really cool after having had a break for a season is that when we started writing, so we had done a couple of holiday projects. So we had taken some old Christmas traditional songs. We're all big fans of that Christmas season and had been wanting to do that kind of thing for a while, and kind of the ideas overflowed. So we ended up doing 2 projects that are holiday related within about 4 years of each other. And the thing that kind of came back quickly with that was we just kind of all knew what each other's strengths were. So it made the process, even though we're in different cities. Just technology is amazing, and it really fit in with our process because we could bounce the ideas, share the ideas, and we're just completely trusting that everybody's bringing their strengths to it. And then when we came around to doing writing more original things, so we knew we wanted to do new original music. That just kind of carried over. We got into a room to start that process. We got in a room together and just kind of collected all the ideas and pieces of ideas that were there. And by the time we left that probably 4-hour writing session, we had, 6 really good song ideas, and most of them, fleshed out. And we just kind of had to come back and add some lyrical craft after that.
So you mentioned in the last little bit there that you were all in different cities and you were able to kind of put those albums together. That's something that's kind of, I kind of geek out on the technical side of things.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that process with you lay down you get your drummer and have him lay down the drum tracks and then bounce it down, send it to the bass player and have him do his thing, and he bounces that down and sends it to you? And is it all through Pro Tools? What DAW do you guys use?
We do. All of us are familiar with Pro Tools, and that's kind of the platform that we've all cut our teeth on, digital recording wise. And it is something like what you described. Our kind of paradigm as a band before, since a lot of our writing was done while we were out on the road playing together, we were a live band primarily. A lot of that it happened together. And so we were able to capture some 4-track demos or 8-track digital demos or whatever. Uh-huh. So we're okay with hearing the song in process, hearing the idea in process. I think early on, if Danny had come to me with a work tape where he's banging out something on his upright piano at home and singing, he's got a good voice, but we typically raise things a little bit key-wise to fit my range a little bit more. So it doesn't quite sound like a Smalltown Poets song, with Danny singing his idea and banging it on the piano if it's a guitar song, right?
Yeah.
So early on, it was kind of hard for us as a whole to catch a vision and get really excited about an idea early on. And I think that's changed over the years, is that since we know what each other brings, we can trust that initial expression of inspiration and kind of hear it the way that it could be, not the way that it's sitting there. So because of that, we can program a loop, we can, sing a beat, or, do a beatbox or whatever into a microphone to kind of communicate a feel and send those basic ideas in a Pro Tools session. And then, we each get to add our parts to it. And so what we've tried to maintain as much as possible in terms of the live band feel is we try to come together to track the drums. So we'll work out pre-production stuff, craft the song as well as we can, so we know what the arrangement needs to be. And one of the gifts that is as a lyric writer is you get to try a bunch of different things out. There is that initial inspiration, and I'm always asking the guys, especially if it's not my musical idea, what were you thinking about? What were you feeling when you had this idea? And so we try to lean into that to see what the song's trying to say and what it wants to be. And so it's a bit of a gift as someone working on the lyric and melody to be able to get that early on, see the evolution of it, try some things. And it's just, we can talk about this a little bit more later if you want to, but just sometimes we're surprised in the final product. One of maybe 2 of our favorite songs on our most recent project, when the songs started in that first project process, like I was talking about, they sounded entirely different. Mm-hmm. They had a different lyric and melody. And so the guys all worked on their parts. We even tracked drums with that other lyric and melody in mind. But then they trusted me to, at the end of the day, the music is kind of done, and they almost, with 2 of these songs, heard the songs for the first time after everything else was already done, because I completely changed the lyric and the melody. And when they heard it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea where this song was going. Now it's one of my favorite songs." Not to pat myself on the back with but what happened in that process is I was going, "Oh my gosh, that's the best I've ever heard Byron play drums. What we had before isn't isn't working anymore.
Well, yeah, I think back to your
we're bringing
previous
the level
point
on this.
about just sort of honesty in lyric, but honesty just in music in general. Sometimes when you just let the music do its thing and let the song kind of, feel it out, like you said, I think it's really astute actually that you sort of identified or were able to hone in on that concept of trying to get down to the feeling that the person had when they wrote this bass line or they wrote that drum part or whatever, so that you could kind of have an understanding of where their head was at when it came out of them. And that sort of, allows you to kind of organically maybe develop lyrics around that feeling or that concept. And I think that's really wise. Like, I don't know that everybody approaches it that way.
Yeah, I actually, Ryan and I used to work with some bands in Phoenix back in the day, and I got the opportunity to kind of sit in and sit through a couple practice sessions with 3 or 4 of the bands. And it's really cool to see like the creative process kind of develop when they're writing a new album. Like they come in, they're doing warm-ups, they tune the guitar, the drummer starts kind of just laying down a beat, just warming up, and all of a sudden bass player kind of has this riff and it's going with the drummer, and now the guitar jumps in, and before long you got a full song. It's just really cool to me to be an outsider looking in and see the processes as music comes together. It's really neat.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, no, I've had similar experiences being involved with some different bands as they were writing albums, and yeah, it's a cool experience. It's like watching a painter paint or a one who draw or whatever. Anytime you get to watch somebody kind of engage those creative moments, it's pretty cool.
So we got like the band's formed. Okay, it's still early years. How does it go from we just formed, now we got our first album, we're going into studio, we get signed. What's the next step in like the life of the band?
Yeah, so with Smalltown Poets, that started happening in the spring, and it kind of came around the energy of a few songs we had written, and we had worked on some demos for those things. And there was this record company called Ardent Records that we had just started hearing about, and they were doing something that nobody else was doing. So, we had been with the independent band that we were with before, kind of playing, out of high school. We had played across the country. I mean, we had been doing things for a long time. We had figured some of the independent sustainability things out. We wanted to have a bigger platform, but we just hadn't met the right people. We didn't know the right ways to go about it. I think part of it was we knew we weren't ready, quite ready for it yet. But with these songs, we felt like something was clicking, and with these guys, that there was just a chemistry that was there. So the timing just kind of felt right. So we started in earnest knocking on some doors with folks that we felt would be good partners for taking a step into a bigger platform. And, for the most part, record companies weren't listening to things that they didn't ask for. So, you could send tapes, CDs, this was before video, so it wasn't sending their YouTube channel or whatever back in that time. But you could send things, but there was no guarantee anybody was going to listen to it. So there was this label, they were zigging where everybody else was zagging, and they said, "Hey, send us stuff. We want to hear everything. We're signing people, and we'll take you seriously. So send us stuff." So we sent songs to them, and they listened to it and got in touch with us. And kind of at the same time, there was something else collaborating. It was another conversation happening with someone who was working with us at the time, helping us try to make some connections. They had a relationship with someone at Ardent Records. So there were kind of two conversations happening at one time. So things kind of triangulated with those guys. And they came out to see us play at a festival, and it might have been the second worst performance we'd ever did.
Right.
Literally playing on a stage outdoors that was kind of sinking. It was kind of like a platform stage, really, and it was kind of sinking in the mud because it had been raining a whole lot. So there's, all kinds of, factors
Slipping
at
off the
play.
stage happening.
And I'm sure not getting a lot of sleep was probably one of those factors.
So a couple things. First of all, so is this time period that we're talking about, is this when sort of the first self-titled album came out? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, just in, you said that you guys are primarily a live band, and, at that point especially, you were a live band, and it was really important to capture that sound and that feeling and sort of give people, I guess, in that first album what they would experience if they came to a show. Yeah. How did you guys accomplish that? Do you feel like you got all you wanted out of that first album, and how did that sort of set you up for the future?
I do. I really do. And that was one of the things that made us feel like it was a really good fit. We knew that we were going to have an opportunity to work with a producer that had an aesthetic that really fit in with that. So John Hampton had worked with Gin Blossoms and several other bands that, and you could tell from their recordings that, hey, if I were to go see this band, this is probably a lot what they're going to sound like. So we really appreciated what John's perspective was. And he said, hey, the way I go about producing is I just try to take a snapshot of the band. He's not a heavy-handed guy at all. So yeah, super great engineer. And he's a drummer. So the sounds, we knew we'd be able to trust him with those things. And so they really did turn out to be a really good partner in recording and getting us initiated into what that looks like. So yeah, I think we did get pretty much what we were hoping for.
Nice.
In that.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing I wanted to ask too, just because it's such a different world that we live in now, you were saying, as young as high school or just out of high school, you guys were touring the country and you were really putting in the legwork. And I think that still happens to some extent with music, but you guys did all that before technology, really. I mean, before iPhones and before social media and all this other stuff. Do you think it would have been any different for your career to do it the way we do it now, where, I don't know, you can kind of do it from your couch? Or do you think it was a little bit more valuable to have actually gone out and done the legwork? Was that building of relationships along the way, is that what actually helped, I guess, manifest things down the road?
Gosh, that's a really good question. And I hadn't thought about it in those terms. And I think that, yeah, it's for us, I think it's the only way that it would have happened, because we needed that time to be, putting in those hours. None of us were prodigies, instrumentally or intellectually. So we needed that time to learn how to express ourselves, learn kind of how to not just go out and play our music for people, but really try to communicate with people, try to create some sort of exchange, in a live music setting where it's not just about trying to get people's applause, but it's about trying to have a moment together.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point to make too. And I can probably speak a little bit for Mike, because as he mentioned, both he and I have worked in music together, separately. I've tour managed bands. I've been in in and around the business for a million years, because it's my favorite thing. Yeah. But music can drive people to tears or make people happy. Where you're hitting these emotional chords is, maybe what makes music the coolest platform. If without all that stuff, and there's so much of it on the radio now that is just dreck, that doesn't really.
That's a deep word.
Well, yeah, right. It just doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't resonate with people, I don't think, the way that the older music was. And I think a big part of that is, these people, they get their radio time, they go and play these giant arenas or whatever, but they never have a period in their career where they were the little guy on the small stage in the crappy bar where they hung around for the last half hour and had drinks with the people there, or, whatever your version of that looks like. Yeah. And I think building those foundational relationships early on with your fans and the people who ultimately will carry your career, I think is really key. And one of the things I noticed, and, this is Spotify for what it's worth, but I noticed one of your songs, Prophet, Priest, and King, on your first album, still your most listened to song, or among them anyway. And and I think that maybe is sort of evidence of the point I'm trying to make, which is just by going out and spending that time and getting out and developing those relationships early on, people got that vibe in the beginning.
If you look on their Twitter right now, like the very last post on your guys' Twitter account is someone posting a ticket stub with your original album art signed from like 1996. Yeah. So it's been a minute, but they're still loyal fans, and they're still, you know.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? I mean, so we talk about the importance of relationships or being honest in our music and the type of relationship that builds. And, you know, and I think that kind of thing is evidence of it. You know, the fans that will follow you through a decade of ups and downs and ons and offs, and then circle back around when you're writing new music. I think that's really, really important stuff. And I don't know if every artist gets that nowadays. The guys that are, you know, I mean, they have the Twitter likes or the followers or the whatevers, but I'm not sure it's the same.
Yeah, I think that the possibility for creating in a vacuum has kind of always been there, but I think that there are probably different ways of doing that in the last 15 years than there were the 15 years prior. So I think that there are some folks who are gifted and good at what they do, but it'll be a little bit of a different flavor, kind of connecting virtually versus connecting, you know, in venue after venue, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's one of the things that, you know, I try and get out to a couple concerts a month. There are a few bands that I love and singers that I love that, I mean, I'll fly around the country to catch them.
He's a Hanson mega fan.
I wish I was a Hanson mega fan, but those guys are still cranking. But yeah, no, but I think for me especially, and I think Mike can probably relate to this. I mean, just the emotional value that you pick out of, you know, following a band from their early days is so different than going and seeing a Ariana Grande concert. You know, nobody saw her at some sleazy bar before she was playing the O2. You know, it's kind of a different relationship, I think. And so,
there may be something
for what it's worth
that's akin to, you know, vinyl having a resurgence as well. I mean, none of our stuff has been put on vinyl. We like to do that. And I think that we have some fans that would appreciate that. But just, you know, coming back to having that thing that these people that whose music that you like, that they've created and put thought into, and actually owning something of it, having something physical is a little bit different than I love the easy access that Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, all these things give, you know, iTunes, they give us an easy connection. But I think that there's something
even just the album art, you know, like having the physical CD and flipping through the lyrics, and you know, that's what I would go and buy a new CD, and I would throw it in the car deck and sit in the parking lot and read and look through it and listen to it for the first time, and then it'd be in my car for 2 weeks. You know,
it's part of the experience. Yeah.
It's not the same anymore.
Well, and it's funny that you bring up vinyl. You know, like I have just recently started getting into vinyl again. When I was young, I used to, you know, go dig through all the thrift stores, and I collected a lot of classic vinyl. I had a lot of old classic rock and things like that. And for Valentine's Day, actually, this year, my wife bought me a new record player to have at the house. I haven't had a turntable set up in a long time. And so it gave me the opportunity to go. I now have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. And so I was able to kind of rummage through all my old vinyl and show them, oh, this was America. This is Bread. This is The Doors. This is whatever, you know, and show them all this cool stuff. And my kids just love the tactile sensation of flipping the record and all that stuff, you know, hearing the little pops and cracks and all that stuff, you know. And I think you're right. And I won't go deep on this because this isn't the story of me, but basically, you know, I have a theory, and I'm actually building a couple startup companies around this idea that we've sort of hit this level of technological, you know, saturation where, you know, we can all understand what we can get out of an iPhone or whatever. But with the resurgence of, you know, one that got brought up to me the other day is axe throwing bars that are popping up now.
Oh yeah.
And you know, but on top of that, you know, you've got beard oil and craft beer and foodie movements and all this stuff. I think people are actively seeking for some meaning or something tangible that they can wrap their head around. I mean, you can only play so much, you know, Candy Crush and never really feel anything before you start hungering or sort of itching for something human again. And so, I mean, like I say, I've got a couple products that we're working on that are sort of around that, you know, bringing the old back to new. And, you know, there's versions of that in vintage clothing and other things like that. But I think it's more about the tangible. It's more about having a relationship with something, even if that thing is a block of wood or a vinyl record or, going and seeing a concert live or something. I think there's something about that human interaction that we sort of crave and need. And I think it's taking people some time, but I think everyone's kind of getting there, the novelty of your iPhone is wearing off.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're developing VR technology so you can go to a concert in your front room.
Yeah, I love
it's
that.
like the same kind of.
Yeah, it's still not the same, but it is cool. Actually, my kid's all excited about it because you can get this NBA package where you can sit with your. We have an HTC Vive, and so you can sit with the HTC Vive headset on your sofa, but it's like you're sitting courtside, and so you can sit and watch the game happen. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, big tangent, but I think there's a good nugget in there.
Back to you though. I wanted to go and go down the studio road. Like you said, you recorded with the guy that did the Jim Blossoms.
And he's done a number of big ones too. I think he had ZZ Top. He had some other big names in there.
Yeah.
He cut his teeth engineering some of those ZZ Top records, and he he got a lot of work as a mix engineer as well. He passed away a few years ago. Really miss him. Super talented guy.
That's sad to hear. How did your band change before and after your first studio trip? I know that they kind of whip you into shape when you go in to record. Did that have a big effect on your guys' live show afterwards?
So John Fry was the founder of Ardent Studios, right? And he was one of the principals in Ardent Records as well. And he refused to go see live music because he had come at it from the studio side. He said the live performance is just the band trying to recreate what they did in the studio.
Right.
So I don't agree with that, but there was some of that, hey, in the studio, you can get some things perfect or near perfect. It's definitely, it challenges you at your craft, because you come in and you feel like, hey, when we're playing live, we know how to sit in the pocket together and, these things feel great. But when you're doing overdubs and you're, the lead guitarist or you're the singer and you're laying down some of those last parts, and there's a lot of attention on what you're doing, it definitely feels a bit like being under the microscope. And I think you emotionally respond to that by rising to the occasion or getting frustrated and kind of retreating to just not want to. It's like looking in a mirror, right? Okay, when I hear my voice recorded and then coming back, it's a little bit like looking in the mirror. When I look in the mirror, I don't always like what I see. When I hear what's coming back from my voice, I don't always like what I hear. So I think that it challenges you, but in a refining kind of way.
Yeah.
And so that's the angle we took away from it, is that, hey, we're going to have to embrace the imperfections that are there. That's just part of who we are, but it doesn't stop us from trying to, raise the bar a bit for ourselves. And so there's a lot of grace for each other. Thankfully, we had been playing a good bit together and had some proficiencies with our instruments and our places and our roles in the band. So I don't think that that there was really any damage done. If anything, it kind of, it made us want to be ready for the next time we came in the studio, not to change our sound or not to change who we were, but to work on those things that could be worked on.
Well, a lot of people don't realize how involved and how much of a process it is to actually go into the studio and spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks tracking, getting it perfect, doing this again over and over again. It can be very tolling and take a lot out of an artist. I've done a lot of research on the subject, and there's guys that will actually go in and try and recreate the live environment just to make it more of a performing centric recording session for the guys, just so that they feel more like they're performing instead of let's do this for the 8th time.
Yeah, the space can have an effect on you mentally and emotionally for sure. And if it's a real sterile space, it can even feel more like that. I'm under the microscope, and this is just about trying to be perfect. Thankfully, the spaces that we've been in, we're able to kind of be ourselves and be comfortable with each other. And we never felt the pressure to then go and entirely reproduce exactly what was there in the studio. But the pressure wasn't there because we didn't really do anything much differently in the studio than we would be trying to do live. So there may have been some songs where we added some strings parts or whatever. And so we would try to cover those things sonically in a creative way in a live situation. But, we weren't necessarily trying to reproduce that exact recording.
Not coming out with a backing track and going from there.
Well, and that may...
we never did that, but we didn't feel pressured to change our sound and to be something different. If anything, it was, we did this in the studio because it's who we are, it's what we wanted to do, and we want to try to do as good a version of that as we can.
Well, and that may speak a little bit to the quality of your engineer as well, that he was able to actually allow you to be an artist, and not try and craft you into his pet project.
Yeah.
So I think that's the genius of some of these more well-known and, higher level producers. So,
and we had some gifted folks out on the road with us mixing us live. So it was one of the hugest compliments that we would get, pretty often is, man, you guys sound just like the record. And it wasn't because we were trying to be perfect. It's that we try to be the same,
consistency.
Keep that experience going. So let's talk a little bit about the time between the launch of Smalltown Poets, the self-titled album in 97, and the second album, or the sophomore effort in 98, Listen Closely. Can we talk a little bit about what came after the drop of the initial album, in terms of touring and experience and things like that, and what led to a year later we got to drop this new album. We've got so much building up inside us. We got to get another album out. Yeah,
we were the busiest we'd ever been. Probably the busiest time of our lives, and we knew going into it that it would be hard work, and we had a good team of people that kept us working. And thankfully, we had anticipated the fact that we can't let our creativity be stopped while we're out on the road playing. So we made space to share ideas and to work, whether it was on the bus or setting up, backstage, whatever venue we were at. We kept that creativity going. And so we, going into our first album, one of the things that the guys at our record label used to say was that you got your whole life to write your first album, right? And then you got to write a follow-up. Right. And you got much less of a window to do that. So we were kind of prepared for that as best we could be mentally. And with our first record, all of our good ideas went into that, even to the point where when those sessions were done with that first record, the head A&R guy, he was kind of notorious for saying, "Hey guys, I want to hear one more. Just want to hear one more." and so he did that with us with that first record. And the song that came out of that, it was a song called "If You Let Me Love You." And it was probably one of the most popular songs on that first record. And it came in that kind of 11th hour. So that's just to say all of our best ideas at the time it wasn't like we were pulling from a catalog into that next season of writing so much. So it was a pretty fertily creative time. We just, no idea was off the table. We just took everything seriously and gave it consideration, and worked up as many songs as we could while we were keeping a pretty hefty touring schedule. So we had gotten on a tour that was, going nationwide. And it was multi-city tour, very, very, very busy, and not a lot of off days, not a lot of off time in that season. So it was really busy. Yeah. We were doing radio appearances, in-store stuff, bookstores, plus, the concerts during the week, and still writing. And I think that we were able to, because the roots had been already going pretty deep with the craft of, writing honestly, each of us kind of bringing our ideas, we were able to have more than enough songs to choose from for the next project.
So were you guys the typical, get the Sprinter van? Well, actually, that's nice for
nice these days.
Just
Ford
get the
Econoline.
Ford Econoline with the trailer going from city to city, or were they actually flying you out and kind of backlining your gear for you?
Yeah, we definitely had those days of the van, but at this point we had gotten. We did for a few years. We had a bus. It was an older Eagle, a tour. It was set up for touring, the bunks and stuff like that. But we found this vehicle that I've only seen one other like it, and it was a van front, but it was kind of like the airport shuttle chassis or shell.
Uh-huh.
But it had never been. It had been built to be a small touring vehicle. So we just found it on a lot in Georgia. That it was just a bizarre thing. It was exactly what we want, what we had pictured in our minds, but didn't know existed. And I walked over this lot because seeing it from the highway, I was like, this is the vehicle of our dreams. So it was easier to drive than a bus, but bigger than a van. So it has 6 bunks in it and then a little lounge space. So yeah, you didn't ask for the details, but we had something that we could drive ourselves, or we could hire someone to drive if it was a long touring situation. So for that tour, yeah, we were driving city to city. There were, when we were off of a tour, whether it was when we were headlining or when we were supporting on, we would often do weekend dates that were fly dates. So we've done a little bit of both of those things, and they both have their ups and downs.
Ups and downs, yeah. If you could go back and pick 1 or 2 stories from the road, do you have any that stand out that are just, oh my goodness, I got to tell the story?
Well, 2 of them involve that vehicle. Someone, I guess it was the booking agent. And I guess that's just where the opportunities were. But it seemed like this one particular year we had gotten the timing off, because we were touring in the northern part of the United States in the coldest months, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, gosh, what were we thinking? And I remember we were waking up one morning, because we would often drive through the night. Since we had bunks, we would often drive through the night. And I remember waking up, and one of the first things that you would do as you're waking up in your bunk is to go, okay, are we moving or are we still? And then you play this game, are we at a truck stop? You just kind of guess where we are before you pull the curtain back and step out of your bunk. And so I could tell we were stopped, and I just heard this noise. I was like, gosh, what is that? That's a weird sound. Sounds a little bit like a saw. So the great thing about this vehicle is that the bunk room had a door, and there were, when you closed that door, there was no daylight getting in.
Nice.
You had no idea what time of day it was unless you had a clock handy or whatever. So open up the door, blasted by sunlight. But I could see through the window of the vehicle that we're in a parking lot of the department store. I don't know, Walmart or something like that, just to tell we were in a parking lot. And what had happened is the driver had been pulling into this parking lot to just rest for a little bit, and didn't realize there was ice on the road, and sort of hit a patch of ice, went up onto like a little median, and had run over a small tree.
You slept through all of it.
All of it. And so the manager of the store was out there with a saw cutting the tree their vehicle. That was the squeaking sound that I was hearing. And one a little bit scarier, but similar is it wasn't the same run, but it was probably a similar part of the country. We were traveling one night, and we had no business being out on the road. Honestly, I don't think we knew that.
You were young and dumb at the time, right?
We didn't make a decision to drive out into a blizzard, but nonetheless, we were driving out into a blizzard, and a similar kind of thing where I woke up and it was strangely quiet because usually, even if we were stopped, the generator was still going. So vehicles like that tend to have a generator that
AC and
supplies
electrical.
electricity
Yeah.
for your air conditioning, and your lounge area, TVs and stuff. But it was just stark quiet, and then it sounded like I was hearing echoes, like you would hear if you're inside of a room, right? I was like,
What is going
that's
on?
weird. That's not even possible. How could that be? So again, I open up the door to the bunk room and walk out, and sure enough, through the windshield of the vehicle, we're inside of a garage. And you can imagine the questions that I have. Right?
Yeah, that's an awesome thing to be greeted with when you get out of bed.
And so what happened was that our driver, we were on interstates, kind of going at highway speeds. It was a lot of snowfall, but a lot of vehicles were out. But apparently he was going around a tractor trailer, and just the draft of the combination of the wind and the draft from going around that tractor trailer shifted him kind of out of the ruts that were on the road. And he lost control and actually went down into a median on the interstate, that all the way down into the other side, came back up again, and came to a rest on the side of the road. Okay. All this happened, and he's screaming, oh!
I want to know what kind of sleep medication you're on, because you're
you're a great sleeper.
None of us woke up. Besides him, there are 6-7 other guys in the vehicle. Nobody woke up, and we got pulled by a wrecker into the shop, into the garage. None of us woke up.
That's amazing.
Completely oblivious to anything that was going on.
That's awesome. And meanwhile, your poor driver has got white knuckles and white hair, and losing his mind.
Yeah, he had to go through some therapy before he would get around the road.
That's awesome.
Well, cool.
So, I guess, can you tell us a little bit, maybe this should have come earlier in the interview, but maybe can you tell us a little bit about some of your musical influences, people that have sort of helped guide your path a little bit? One of the things that I think is very cool about you guys, and, a lot of bands that sort of perform at your level, is just the technical skill. Obviously you play a lot, and so you get good, but, not every band is a great band. There are plenty who aren't. And so I wondered if there were some that you guys kind of, I don't know, held in high esteem or whatever, or maybe you got a chance to play with some band that it was, this was the moment. This is what it had all been for.
Yeah, wow. Definitely had some heroes, for sure. It's such a difficult question. It's easier for me to answer for myself. It's harder for us to answer as a band. Sure. As to what might have shaped, our whole band sound. There are some things that we agree on that we all kind of like. And what's funny is Miguel. So Miguel de Jesus is our bass player. And you could tell from his name that he might have some different influences culturally and musically than I had when I was a kid.
The name does not scream Georgia.
So, but what's funny is he and I will often share vinyl from our childhood with each other, or take a picture of it and send it back and forth. So Miguel and I are the two guys that live closest to each other, so we see each other pretty regularly. And what's funny is the similarities in the music that influenced us. He and his family immigrating from Puerto Rico when he was 12, and me growing up in South Georgia. It's really funny how there are some similarities in things like, the band Alabama. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
Country band Alabama.
Yep. I can't get enough Elvira.
That's Oak Ridge Boys.
Oh, that's right. Shoot.
Yeah.
I have an Alabama one too. I know I do. Crap. All right, keep going. I'll Google it and then act as if.
So anyway, that's a kind of to set up this reality that we have so many diverse. Because my question to Miguel was, why do you have this album? Why on earth was this a part of your story musically growing up? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, it's just, I liked discovering new music. And he's like, I just liked good things that, made me feel good or that I liked the sound of it. He wasn't thinking about whether or not it was cool to listen to them or not. So he has I just think a great, healthy view on just being able to have a large vocabulary of likes.
That's awesome. Well, and I think that, ultimately leads to more rounded musicians. Most of the guys that I know that are pretty good musicians have pretty deep catalogs, where they're listening to, and one of my good friends, this guy, Johnny, that sings for a band called OPM. He's been on our show before. He, listens to a ton of like old Cuban music, like really old Cuban music. And his genre is more like rap or reggae or something. Not particularly influenced by this old music, but he likes the music and he likes the sounds and all that stuff, kind of like what you're describing.
I'll actually go into, like, if I'm going to like a garage sale or a record store or something, lots of times I'll buy an album just because of the cover art, or, like not even knowing what's on it, not even listen to it. If it's a decent price, $5-6, I'll just buy it and check it out later. And that's how I came across Whitesnake.
Yeah.
Here I go again. I found it in a garage sale and I liked the cover art, so I just bought it.
And, funny.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk a little bit about like at the top of the show, we led with some of the award and accolades and things like that you guys have been nominated for and have achieved over the course of the years. Can we talk about some of those high points? Like what was it like for your band? I mean, I assume, a lot of bands never get to a level where they're being Grammy nominated or things like that. Like, I mean, for you guys, were those real affirmative moments? Like, was there any doubt and that was the thing that really kept us moving? Or like, I mean, that has to be a pretty sensational feeling, when you get the email or the phone call from your agent that says, hey, just so you know, you've got a couple Grammy nominations sitting on the table.
Yeah. Well, I'll kind of try to answer that previous question a little bit better in this as well. Because I think for us, the dreams were more about, songs. So the things that influenced us the most were songwriters. So I think when we found out that we'd been nominated for a Grammy, that's not necessarily a songwriting award category necessarily, but I think it did make us feel like we can do this. We did it. We wrote some songs together that have connected with people, and I think that may have been the biggest thing for us to kind of have that context created for us, where we had some feedback that wasn't just based on concert attendance or record sales or spins on radio or whatever, but there's a creative group of people, and somehow in the context of that creative group of people recognizing some things, this work got on the radar. And so I think that made us feel like, in terms of a band that could write songs together and record them and go out and play them live, I think that was some good positive feedback, and probably was one of the things that helped in that season make us feel like we'd hit a landmark,
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Well, I mean, I mean, like you said, it sounds like you guys, had a very pure place where you guys were coming from in terms of, and we keep beating this drum, but this, honest songwriting, all this, approach to the music. Like, it wasn't about being commercial or whatever. It was about getting this message out, or producing music that was of a certain level or of a certain quality, or whatever characteristics were important to you. And so, but I have to imagine, and maybe I'm needy, maybe I have some daddy
needy.
issues or
He's
mother
very
issues
needy.
or something, and need to go get checked out. But for me, like, having a little bit of that affirmation, like, I've won a handful of advertising awards and things like that, and to be recognized among your peers, I think is at least a feather in your hat, if nothing else.
Yes, it's such a good feeling. It is. Yeah, undeniably.
Well, and so can we talk about, I think, we mentioned it was Grammy nominated. But I think you mentioned that you had actually won the Billboard Music Video Award. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what that was like?
What's so cool about that is that we got to work with a guy whose work we admired a lot. So Ben Pearson was the filmmaker that we worked with on that video. And so the cool thing, I love it when other people win. I love it when we get to highlight or be a part of, or some way partner with someone who's doing something that we admire and doing it really well. So the fact that we got to work with Ben on that, and that the video, which was in large part, his and Jimmy Abeg's art direction and creativity that took that over the top. They pulled some ideas from the song lyrics, but their art direction, his cinematography, just the editing of that, just all of that. I think it highlighted his craft. So I love the fact that we got to partner with another artist in another medium, and those kind of things came together and got some attention.
That's cool. Yeah, that's amazing. As we're starting to get kind of to the end of this thing, I wanted to maybe circle back around and just talk a little bit about the most recent album.
Sure.
I think we've done a pretty good job covering the history. But let's talk about this album. You guys came back together after a brief hiatus, or, a 4 or 5 year hiatus. Obviously the connections that you guys had built among each other in terms of like familial relationship and everything had remained true, and you guys were able to come back together and formulate this new album. Can we talk a little bit about that and maybe about the new single?
Absolutely. One of the things that we wanted to do with Say Hello, with the songs that would become that project, is we wanted to, as much as possible, write them together as a band and track them together as a band. And it's not because we don't like using technology or don't think that we can do good work with that. It's that it's a little bit of a different set of rules. A little bit, you're setting yourself up with, I don't know, necessarily limitations, but different, a different environment. And so we got the opportunity to track a bunch of those drums back at Ardent Studios in Memphis. So it was really cool going back into that studio where we had recorded, 3 of our records and work on these songs together, tracking these songs together, because we had gotten together to write as much of the basic parts of them and kind of craft the arrangements and stuff. We'd gotten together to do that. And so getting to do the studio recording part of it together, it just feels really good to be able to track those basic rhythm parts all in the same room, in the same space. So that did, I think it helped bring out what we kind of believe has always been there for us, is that there's just a certain chemistry when we're all playing together. So that was a big part of this record and the way that it came together and putting it together. So we also, one of our great friends that's recorded the last few things that we've done, engineered and helped produce, Matt Goldman, we did some of it in his studio as well. So that was a good feeling.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like a reunion of old friends or something.
And you had mentioned before how the space can be a character in the process as well, and we definitely felt that.
The nostalgia of going back to Ardent again, was probably a pretty cool thing, and I don't know, it took you back 10 years. It took everybody back to when we were doing this the first time, and so that's was probably very meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got some, there was a song that we knew we wanted to have live horns on. We wanted to have a horn section on. So we got some guys from Memphis to come in and play on a song called Impossible, which, we hadn't done before. So it was kind of fun.
Is this sorry to interrupt you. Is this Matt Goldman, the guy that does Under Oath and Anne Berlin?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's one of my questions in here, and we kind of avoided it. You guys are a Christian rock band. That's your kind of forte. And the Anne Berlin and the Under Oath and those guys, that's my level of Christian rock. You guys are kind of in another sphere. Yeah. That's why his name stuck out. I know that guy.
Matt Goldman. No, it's the guy from the Blue Man Group. No. That is kind of funny.
Yeah. Is he there kind of in your area? Is that where his studio's at?
Yeah. I've known Matt for a while, and Matt has played drums for Smalltown Poets on occasion when Byron hasn't been able to make the show or the tour. Matt, I was kind of around when he was cutting his teeth and getting started recording bands. Been a huge fan of everything that he does.
Well, Amberlin's one of my favorites.
Matt's a great musician, and he's a really good engineer, producer as well. So yeah, we really loved working with Matt. He's not too far away.
That's awesome.
So,
That's cool.
Well, cool. So I guess one last thing on the for the new album, it just came out the end of 2018. Any big plans to support it? Any touring this year? I mean, we're all getting older nowadays. Touring's a little more difficult. You probably don't want to sleep in the back of the RV anymore. What's that look like? Are you guys doing any supporting shows or anything like that to get the album out there, or where can people see you?
We have done. So we did. We're just trying to work smarter, and so we're kind of aiming at some different key areas and times of year when it works for us to be able to do that. So we did some shows back in the fall, and we're looking to do some more relatively soon. I don't know what details have been finalized yet,
Okay.
but I know that we're looking at trying to get out west again.
Cool.
And also,
Well, yeah, definitely look us up if you're out this neck of the woods. I'm sure we'll hear from Caleb if you are, but the manager that we know together. And then just kind of a silly thing I want to ask you, and maybe you don't even have an answer for it. So as we were doing research for this show, one of the things we did is we looked at Spotify and we looked at top albums and things like that. But one of the things you mentioned working smarter and playing specific markets, things like that. And as I'm looking through sort of the top 5 cities for you guys, it's some of the expected. There's Atlanta on there, Los Angeles, Chicago, some of these big cities. Dallas is actually number 1 right now. But the 5th one is Amsterdam. And I wonder if you had any idea or what the correlation is, if you have some connection to Holland.
There's a festival, Flavo Fest, and I'm not sure if it's still happening, but right around 99 or 2000, we played that festival. It was in Eindhoven, I think. So not Amsterdam. But not too far from there.
Yeah, Amsterdam adjacent.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe, we.
Interesting. It just was kind of out of left field. I was like, oh, okay, well, you got the usual suspects, all these cities, the hometown, that kind of thing, and then Amsterdam. So that was kind of an interesting observation. There's also some different playlists of you on Spotify, and one of them, I'm not even going to attempt to say it in Dutch because I did a 30 minutes in Dutch on Rosetta Stone, and I was exhausted. But anyway, there's a playlist that you can find on Spotify that's a Dutch list that you guys are featured in, so it's kind of fun.
Nice.
So so I guess then to kind of wrap this thing up, where can people find you guys, find the new music, see you on the road, stay and keep tabs on you?
Yes, so smalltownpoets.tv is a website, and that's a good way to get on the mailing list. And we try to do a pretty good job of staying in touch with people without being annoying and having something show up in your inbox all the time.
Appreciate that.
And on Instagram, we're kind of posting things that we're up to on Instagram quite a bit. And
and I think it's at Smalltown Poets.
What's that?
The username I think is at Smalltown Poets on Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you. Yes, and Facebook is a good place as well. And we're on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, all the streaming places.
Cool. And all right. Well, Mike, anything else for the man?
No, I think we're pretty good. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right, cool. Thanks so much, Michael. Really appreciate your time, and I'm glad we were able to finally make this work. As Mike mentioned at the top, we've had a couple, well, maybe it was off air even, but yeah, we've tried to make this happen for a couple weeks and weren't able to make a line up. So I'm glad we were able to make the moons finally line up.
Good. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yep, of course. All right. Any parting shots, Mike? Anything you want to say?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, as usual, thanks to everybody who tuned into the YouTube live stream. This show will be available on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else you can find our show. Eggscast.com always, and smalltownpoets.tv. So anything else, Michael, before we get out of here?
No, just thank you guys. I like what you're doing. Appreciate the conversation.
Cool. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate your time. Have an awesome day. And everybody, we'll see you next week.